three topics we're going to cover in this session, AI, robotics, and surgical simulation. I think that AI is the hot thing right now. Anybody that's done any AI work, just for their own personal life, whether it's ChatGPT, Grok, Gemini, there's a whole bunch of them, Claude, it's just blown away by the capabilities of these large language models. And some of them are being applied to very specific tasks, in accounting and law and so on, finance. They're moving into the medical marketplace in a major way, in so many different areas, like answering phones. I think we're going to see AI being the new nurse practitioner who answers a phone, goes through your symptom list, and decides what's the first course of treatment. Sadly, I think we're going to be eliminating jobs in the process, but that's here to stay. The acceleration is just going to be amazing. And what these things can do in just image processing, it's just, we all saw a Google biomedical engineering study looking at just AI's ability to interpret fundus photos and gather data from these photos that none of us as ophthalmologists can actually detect. The sex of the patient with 98% accuracy, the systolic and diastolic blood pressure within 5 millimeters of mercury, hemoglobin A1C, on and on and on it goes, just from a simple fundus photo. Imagine what it can do to three-dimensional data, OCT data, being able to detect disease before it even presents itself, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, you name it. So I think that's super exciting. And that's already happening right now. And we're going to see just an enormous acceleration. On the robotics side, we're just entering the phase where we're seeing companies get into the space to do robotic surgery. I think there's going to be a lot of development in this area. We've already seen the first live surgeries in the robotics area, and we'll see more of that. Now, whether we have single-purpose devices that just do one procedure, or whether we have humanoid robots, eventually the same robots that can make a bed in a hotel, flip a burger in the McDonald's, and do your accounting, and also do neurosurgery and eye surgery. I don't know where we're going to be ultimately, but we're beginning that trek into robotics, and that's only going to accelerate. Especially, at scale, these robots can learn. If you have, just as an example, if you have 20,000 robots deployed in hotels making beds, and one or two of them come up with some new technique for making the bed better or faster, immediately that data, that learning gets uploaded to the cloud. It gets downloaded to every robot in the field. Instantly, everybody knows that new trick. And that's happening at scale 1,000 times an hour or 50,000 times an hour. So the learning is going to be incredible. Imagine that robots deployed in the surgical field, all learning how to do surgery better and better and better. Initially watching surgeons, and then watching videos, and then getting better and better and better. And then the robots doing surgery, each of them feeding data back to their centers and deploying that data. And the same robot could do eye surgery, gallbladder surgery, foot surgery, hand surgery, you name it. So I think we're at the very beginning of this. We're at the, we're now where self-driving cars were, say, 20 years ago. But now they're a reality, right? You've seen the Waymos, you're going to see the Teslas, This is going to accelerate. We're at the beginning of this now with robotics in the medical space, very beginning, but it's going to accelerate. I don't know how fast. There's going to be a lot of safety engineering that's needed, but we're at the beginning. And then finally, surgical simulation. We've been doing, animal cadaverized surgery forever. There's definitely something to be said for that, but it's cleaner to do it on a virtual eye than it is on a pig eye or a human eye. Obviously, the cost is better. Development costs are very high, but once you have it, the devices, the simulators become very versatile, and they also can be adapted to learning new technologies. And we have studies at UCLA that show that residents who train on surgical simulators are better surgeons during their first 100 cases. If you compare a matched group, those who trained on simulators versus those who don't, those who trained have lower complication rates. And it doesn't surprise anybody that would be the case. That's the case with airline pilots, right? They spend hundreds and hundreds of hours flying virtual planes before they get in behind the cockpit of a 747 and fly the actual plane. So it makes sense that would be borne out in reality, and it does. So in the surgical simulators, we're getting more companies into the space, and the simulators are getting better and better. Initially, they were kind of tinker toy, no tactile feedback. Now we have tactile feedback, very realistic scenarios where things have, indentation pressure. You can tell when a knife goes through. They bleed, things like that. That the eyes can move like a human. So we're getting really good at surgical simulation. And again, it's like everything else. It's just going to keep getting better. We're not at the very beginning of this. It's been going on with the IC simulator, for instance, for years. But again, everything is just improving, and the pace of improvement is just staggering, actually.
Really interesting.